This week's episode of the Cloudcast is brought to you by Intel Cloud for All, driving the creation of thousands of clouds.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We're coming to you live from the massive studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. A couple of co-hosts tonight. So, Aaron, welcome to the show. 2 weeks in a row that we're both on.
I know. 2 weeks in a row, and maybe we'll make it three. But then after that, we'll break the streak because I'll be over in DockerCon.
That's right. You'll be over there. You'll do some shows from Spain. And joining us because for two reasons. One, because we always have to have her on at least once a year. Amy Lewis, welcome to the show.
Hi.
And we have some other reasons we're having you on as well, but we'll get to that in a second. Aaron, I usually never would talk about Saturday stuff with you, especially this Saturday. But we do have we do have a Saturday thing we need to talk to people about, because about 3 months from now on a Saturday, we're doing the Krispy Kreme run again. And which means that we are going to start asking our community to be generous as they have been for the last 3 years. And help us raise some money. And for anybody who knows the show, has been a long-time listener to the show, you know everything about the Krispy Kreme Run. It's the annual event that Aaron and I do every February in Raleigh. For those of you that don't know, basically what it is it started off as a fraternity prank at NC State University, and it's turned into a 8,000 person kind of Mardi Gras / crazy man versus the world eating contest, and it's an awesome fundraiser for the North Carolina Children's Hospital. So here's how it works. It's real simple. We have a button right on the website on the cloudcast.net. If you go there, you will see it right in the top corner. There's a place you can make donations, and the way it works is every dollar, every dime that you contribute on behalf of the show goes to the North Carolina Children's Hospital. It's basically for kids who are having a hard time, health reasons. They got a bad shake. It helps both them and the doctors, but it also helps all the families if they've got extended stays and so forth. So we ask the community, we make contributions to it, and the flip side of it is Aaron and I do this crazy thing in February where we get up in the morning on usually an incredibly cold morning. We run
cold, rainy, sleet, snow.
Yeah.
We've had everything over the years.
Yeah. So we get up with 8,000 of our closest friends. We run 2.5 miles. We throw down 12 Krispy Kreme donuts, and then we go running again. We run another 2.5 miles back uphill and try and keep it all down. And the good news, it's a lot of fun. And the great news is collectively as a community, and we have to thank everybody every year. We've raised $14,000 over the last 3 years, which is really awesome when you get to stand in front of the people and go, here, we're trying to help kids. So anyways, you guys will hear us talking about that for the next couple of months. If you'd like to make a donation, we would love it. And again, every bit of it goes to the kids and trying to help them. So,
yeah, and so I have to ask for predictions now ahead of time. Amy, you in this year?
You know what? I was going to ask if I could split a leg, and I'll take the donut eating.
There you go. Or just run to the donuts and then eat the donuts and then just get in the car and go home.
Yeah, because I think it's somewhat well documented that the year I attempted this, number one, I thought it was a 5K, not a 5 mile. For all you Europeans listening, but feel my pain. That's a big difference. And I got passed on the back half of that race by a guy in a wheelchair going uphill. So not my best race, but I finished.
But you've been training, so you're much better off. So you're good.
Yeah, I'm in. I can't back down from a challenge.
All right. Well,
yeah, and I'm the one who, we'll see, because I've got a bad back. I can't even hardly walk, more or less run now. So we'll see. This is going to be an interesting.
Excuses are already.
No, I'm in. It's just going to be.
I'm taking you out.
It's going to be three months of training here. I got to get it going. So we'll see.
All right. I one other piece of housekeeping, and this is kind of a cool thing to do. It's November 5th, which means we've got 2 months left in the year. And got to thank the community, people who listen. We passed last year's number, which was what we thought the biggest that we had done in 4 years. We've now passed last year's number in terms of listens. We've got 2 months left. So Thank you to everybody who listens. Thanks to everybody who tells a friend about what we do. We love doing it. We're glad you guys like what we're doing, and it's cool that the audience keeps getting bigger every year. So thank you very much. All right, enough housekeeping, enough of us kind of gabbing. Let's get to our guest. Tonight we're going to do something a little different. So when Aaron and I shifted the show and decided to move away from kind of infrastructure-y kind of stuff and move towards more of what's going on in the public cloud and DevOps and SaaS applications and so forth. We covered some of SaaS applications, like we would cover a lot of sort of IT management ones, but we haven't really covered a lot of them that are out there making money and doing interesting, cool things. So we came across one here recently that we thought was kind of neat, and we thought it was a little controversial too. So excited to have on Srinivas Krishnamurti, who is CEO and founder of Zugata. Srinivas, SK, welcome, and thanks for being so patient with us, kind of yip-yapping there for so long.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me on the show, Brian.
So first and foremost, you're kind of an alumni of the infamous VMware Mafia. Previous to Zugata, you were at VMware for a while. Give us a little bit of your background, and more importantly, why did you decide to start Zugata, and tell us a little bit about the service?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was at VMware. I joined VMware in 2003. I think it was about 300 odd people at VMware. And I finally left VMware in 2013 when it was about 15,000 people. So it was an awesome ride, a 10-year ride at VMware, and I got a chance to work with a lot of wicked smart people on some very cool products. I joined VMware as the product manager for VMware Workstation, which in those days, in 2003, I think probably was about 40% of our revenue. And the world has changed a lot since then, obviously. But and I was fortunate enough to work on a lot of different initiatives in my 10 years there. After Workstation, I was responsible for all our developer products. And I ran the virtual appliance program for a while. I ran the Linux strategy for a while, and in between somewhere there, I was also responsible for VMware Fusion, which was our first consumer product that allows you to run Windows on a Mac. And the last thing that I did before I left VMware was I actually ran the mobile group, the business side of the mobile group, that brought virtualization onto Android devices and did some early MDM and MAM work. So after about 10 years, I felt like it was time to leave. So I decided to leave VMware, and I was always fascinated with the startup scene. Obviously, when you work in Silicon Valley, so I met up with Steve Herod, who was actually incidental. I think you guys probably know Steve Herod pretty well.
We do. He tells us he's a fan of the show. So yeah, now Steve's becoming a good friend, and we know
absolutely.
Steve a little bit.
Yeah, and he was actually my first office mate at VMware. I think when I came in as product manager for Workstation, I believe he was the director of engineering for ESX server product in those days. And he had left VMware in 2013 as well, and he joined General Catalyst as a VC. So I got talking to him, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come hang out here as an entrepreneur in residence? Think of some ideas, and if you find any ideas that you want to pursue, we'll support you," kind of a thing. So I spent a bit of time at General Catalyst in 2013 and early 2014, working on a couple of different ideas. And this idea that we actually started Zugata on started to come together in spring of last year. So I spent a lot of time last summer talking to customers and kind of putting the team together. And we officially got started writing code in January of this year, and came out of stealth in October.
Okay. And
cool.
Give folks give folks who aren't familiar with Zugata some background on kind of the premise and the problem statement.
Yeah. So we started Zugata based on two key insights that we had. The first one is that most organizations know more about their customers and users than their own employees. Right? If you think about Facebook or Twitter or any of these services, right? I mean, they collect so much data about who we are, right, and what we're looking at. And that's core to their business because they serve ads, and the relevancy of the ads, is dependent on how well they know you, right? So all that is based on data that they collect about us. And, when you go talk to them, they say, look, employees are our most important asset, but it's amazing how little they actually know about their own employees. All the information about employees that they have is typically in an HR database. And that is just all static information. It's got information about, where you live, your social security number, your pay, and all that stuff. I mean, that's not really knowing you. And so our idea was, hey, could we actually use data to better understand our employees? And if we can better understand them, then we can actually help them reach their fullest potential, all based on data, just like we're doing in retail and in marketing and sales everywhere else, where we're using data to make decisions. And the second insight that we had was that when you looked at all the HR software that's out there, most of it was really built more for HR people and focused really on compliance and being the system of record, right? And so people like you and I would never log into an HR system because there was nothing in it for us, right? I mean, I would log into our HR system at VMware once a year to do annual performance reviews. And other than that, I never touched it. And the aha moment for us was, look, it wasn't really built for us. It wasn't built to help me be a better employee or be a better manager. It was all about, being compliant and more focused on what HR wanted. So our vision was, how do we flip that? How do we put the employee at the front and center of the universe and say, okay, what would an employee want? How can we help an employee be the best that they can be at work, all using data? So the way we think about it is, we're an employee-centric, data-driven HR system is what we're setting out to build.
Interesting. Okay. So what's the idea here of this will fundamentally change kind of work environments, but what have you learned from the early adopters so far? And did it kind of go where you thought it would go is probably the first thing I want to know.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, the whole notion of doing, data-based people decisions. I mean, Google is probably at the cutting edge, in the HR space. And a lot of companies that we're talking to are, very fascinated with what's happening at Google and want to be able to replicate some of these database decisions that Google is able to make. But most companies just don't have, a whole bunch of data scientists in the HR team to help, make all these decisions for them and parse through all the data. So at a certain level, we're kind of offering our product as a way to help them make better people decisions. And the thing that we've realized also is there's so many different things that you can do, right? When you think about data and analytics and people, it's a pretty big problem. It's not something that you can solve right away. So we're trying to break it down into small chunks. And the first product that we shipped and announced a couple weeks ago is focused around helping employees, individual contributors, and get better. And that's typically the notion of getting performance feedback is done in your annual performance reviews. And I hope I don't have to convince your audience that nobody likes annual performance reviews. In fact, I think annual performance reviews and filing expense reports are probably the two worst things that we all have to do as employees. And so the performance review system is completely broken. And so we came up with a system where you can actually get continuous feedback from the people that you actually work with. So based on who you're emailing, based on who you're meeting with, and based on who you're Slacking with, if you use Slack as your IM system, we actually build your social graph at work, and we know exactly who you're working with, so we know who to ask for feedback, right? You don't have to give us names of people that you work with. We actually collect continuous feedback for you based on who you're working with, and the feedback just comes to you and helps you understand your strengths and weaknesses. And for things that you're not good at, we hook you up with mentors in the organizations who are really good at the skills that you're not good at. And we help you track your progress. So it's almost like a quantified self, type of a product that is really laser focused on helping employees develop and be the best that they can be at work. And that's the first product that we've done. And in that context itself, we've been in private betas since May of this year. We've had a whole bunch of design partner customers, kind of play with the product and give us a bunch of feedback in terms of what's working, what's not working. So the product looks so vastly different than what it looked like in May, just based on the feedback that we've been getting. So we're iterating. We do weekly sprints, actually. And so we're iterating as quickly as we can. We're learning and, trying to get all the feedback back into the product as quickly as we can.
So SK, quick question. You were talking about how data is so important for companies to understand their employees, but correct me if I'm wrong, just trying to understand this, the employer doesn't necessarily get any of this data. It's all individual centric. Is that correct?
Yeah. In the first product, that's totally correct.
Okay.
I mean, we'll probably end up doing a manager product. We'll probably do like a VP type product right downstream where, they'll get, information. But the current product is all about helping the individual. And so the information, the feedback that we collect is only shared with the employer, not with the manager, not even with HR. Nobody has access to this feedback except the employee.
Well, and one thing that sort of struck me, and I'm curious what your testers have said and what's borne out, but I tend to work in a very in a public role where a lot of my engagement, my Slack channels would be people not within my company, and it's kind of interesting. You've created a product where your peer, it actually breaks down the walls of the company itself. That's why I sort of honed in on that. What kind of data you would get, because I feel like my graph would be only 10% within my actual company of people that would give me feedback if, based on that data pull.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting, right? I mean, the first version of the product, we said, let's not ask for feedback outside of your domain. So we're only looking, let's say you're an employee at VMware. We only get your feedback from folks that you work with who are in the VMware domain. But interesting, some of our customers have already said, hey, listen, we love this product. We want to actually use this for our salespeople or maybe even our support people where, they interact a lot with customers. And could we actually get feedback from the customers that they're serving or the clients that they're serving? So that's probably something that we'll do downstream. But for now, we said, hey, for the first product, let's just keep it within the domain is where our focus is. But eventually, I think we'll probably go outside the domain as well.
Yeah. So there's been there's been companies who've tried to do some of these types of things before in the past, right? There was a company called Zobni at one point who used to do it with email, and eventually kind of got sold to Microsoft. And there's been, there was a famous guy at MIT named Dr. Sandy Pentland who would do a lot of this kind of peer-based stuff. How did you guys go about kind of trying to avoid the mistakes of the past, or how much did you look at it and say, that those previous approaches were actually pretty good, but they delivered it wrong, like the user experience was wrong, or there wasn't enough data processing, or how did you sort of figure out how to not scrape your knees where other people had scraped their knees?
Yeah, so I think that the biggest thing that is different in the way we're doing it versus some of the other efforts is that for us, we're laser focused on employees, not the employer. And it's an opt-in program, right? So the employees are willingly opting in and saying, hey, if I want to get feedback from the people that I work with, obviously I need to tell you who I work with. So I'll give you access to my email credentials so you guys can figure out who I work with. And so the benefit is to the employees, and therefore they're willingly giving us access to it versus us going to like HR or IT and saying, hey, give us access to your Exchange server and we can give you all these insights about your people behind their back, right? I mean, I think there's a little bit of that was going on in earlier attempts. So we're trying to keep it, focused on employees, helping the employees. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, if we can help the employees, work at their fullest potential, then by definition, the organization itself is going to work better, right? And so we're focused on employees and very focused also on making it an opt-in program versus somebody doing it behind their backs.
Yeah, the opt-in aspect of it is very fascinating to me because that really, at least in my mind, overcomes my initial reaction was, it's a little bit of privacy, it's a little bit of forced down your throat kind of thing, a little bit of almost like Big Brother tracking you at times, and even though it's supposed to make me better, I don't know if I want it. Right? It's the equivalent of I was originally thinking of like the insurance companies that put the little tracking chip on your car to make sure you're driving okay, kind of thing, to make you better. But when it's all kind of opt in, then that certainly makes more sense and certainly probably quells those potentially negative initial reactions. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the reason. I mean, in fact, when we started last summer, when I was playing with the idea initially, our initial thought process was, hey, let's go talk directly to the heads of HR and tell them, hey, here are all the cool analytics that we can do if you give us access to your email servers and this and that and that. And the pushback that we actually got was that, hey, even though the enterprise actually owns the data, they were just hesitant to give access to that information because they felt like people would feel like it's it's an invasion of their privacy, that as you said, Big Brother, somebody's watching over me, kind of a thing, right? And that's one of the reasons why we decided to change our focus and make it an employee opt-in thing. And if there will be a certain set of employees who will be like, look, I don't really care about this, either because I don't want feedback, or if I don't want to get better, or I just feel like this is too intrusive, I don't want to participate, and then they can always opt out. And so I think that actually helped us a fair bit in terms of the traction that we're getting.
What about any concerns about, it seems the unfortunate side of human behavior is anonymity gives people license to say what they want untempered. Does the process of aggregation, is there a tipping point? If you've got, do you need X number of people in your social circle to be able to mitigate some of those outlying comments that are inevitable?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we've had a lot of customers and a lot of users using this app since May of this year, and so far we have not seen any weird behavior. And I'm not saying that it'll never happen. I'm sure eventually it will happen. A couple of things that we're doing. We actually want to have, NLP algorithm in the back end that can actually flag some, we can actually parse the text that people are typing and be able to say, hey, can we flag something that's inappropriate even before it actually goes to the person who's, at the receiving end? Could we actually stop it from going? Could we flag it as inappropriate, comments and stuff like that are things that we're working on. And at the same time, one of the key differences in our product is that rather than just giving you a blank slate and asking you to write, comments and give feedback to people, it's a very guided experience. So we actually give you a set of, cards. Is the UI looks almost like Tinder, right? Where each card that shows up on mobile is a skill that you're giving feedback to somebody on, and you swipe right if that skill is a strength, and you swipe left if that skill is not yet a strength, is the way we're actually asking people to give feedback. And at the very end, there's a free-form text field. And even there, it's very guided, right? We say, hey, you marked this particular skill as a strength or a weakness. Can you give a little bit of commentary in terms of what this person needs to do specifically to improve, or what specifically does this person need to continue doing to make sure that this stays a strength, right? So we're trying to guide the experience as much as possible, and putting, these, when you go bowling, there are these gutter, the guides in the gutter, right? So you don't go into the gutter often when you play with kids. So we're trying to put those types of guidelines in place, all to protect the kind of, feedback that people provide.
Yeah. Well, and I noticed you have it set up so that to see commentary, you have to give. To get, you have to give, which also seems to incent better behavior than, freewheeling and no potential repercussion.
Yeah, it's actually, that's one of the things that we learned from our early customers as well, right? When we first shipped the product, we didn't have that enforcement. And what we realized was that everybody wanted feedback, but nobody wanted to give feedback. Nobody wanted to put anything in, the
LinkedIn review problem, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so what we noticed was the poor managers were the ones who were always giving out feedback because they kind of expect that to be, that's part of their job, so they're used to it, they do it. But if you're not a manager, nobody was, putting anything back into the system. And we felt that was a lost opportunity. So that's the reason why we implemented this, you got to give to get. And since then, it's actually, been a lot more active, and we're seeing higher engagement in the product as well. And that's been very key in terms of the usage so far for us.
Is there a way, maybe by means of an example that you've gotten from people? Is there a way to track? It's one thing to get feedback, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. It's another thing to kind of go like, what's a next step? What's an action? And it sounds like you guys have a mechanism that says, for example, if so-and-so gets rated very highly on some skill and somebody else who's in their network maybe is lower, you might connect those two together and go, hey, go have lunch together or something. Like, can you give us a real example of people going like, hey, we've used it for a while and this better behavior has kind of become visible that we've been able to see, or how they've connected those dots?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a couple of things there. One is people are actually getting very interesting feedback. The fact that it's anonymous, is actually helping people be a little bit more honest. And I think the other thing that's also helping is the fact that the feedback is actually not shared with your manager, not shared with HR, right, means that I'm actually there to just help you, right? There's no incentive for me to stick it to you, right? And if I give you bad feedback, doesn't mean you're going to get fired. If I give you too good feedback, it doesn't mean you're going to get promoted at my expense, right? So we've kind of removed all those, concerns, and it's strictly about, it takes a village to help people get better, right? And that's the approach that we're taking. And so we're seeing people be very honest in terms of, trying to help people get better, right? They're providing feedback in terms of like, hey, I think you should do this instead of that, so we can actually see that kind of feedback coming through. And I think the most interesting thing that one of our customers told us is that the fact that they're using this product as a way to help employees develop, they actually want to start pitching that as a perk, right, in the recruiting process. When they're talking to candidates, they're like, hey, if you come and join our company, you will actually get this feedback thing where everybody's giving you feedback, with nobody else, getting access to it except you, because we want you to develop. We want to help you get better. And so they actually feel that that's actually a perk that they can offer to their candidates. That's probably the biggest compliment that we've gotten so far,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm Aaron. Aaron, I'm excited for you to be able to use this to give feedback to some of your crew in Boulder that gets upset about throwing things in the wrong garbage.
Yep, absolutely.
Hey, wait, that was me.
Yeah, exactly. No, and sometimes me. Remember? Let me ask you this. What is it like actually doing a SaaS service? The not necessarily super into the technical aspects, but your background at VMware in particular was more around packaging and products, right? And what has been the challenges behind starting a SaaS service as well? Because we tend to talk to folks on the show, but like I said, they tend to be more infrastructure SaaS products.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't say it's a challenge, but it's actually kind of fun, right? We do weekly sprints, so every week we're shipping new features, right? And we break it down into small chunks, and stuff is getting updated. And I'm absolutely fascinated with SaaS products, and because we're able to do like so much A/B testing, right? We're a service, we're a brand new product, we're out there, right? We don't know certain things where this, if we did it this way, is it going to work better, or is it, if we did it that way, it's going to work better, right? And we're like, let's just do an A/B test. That we put it up on the website. The next time somebody logs in, we can actually track what people are doing and be able to make our decisions based on data that we're collecting in terms of the usage patterns, That's something that is just so hard to do with, on-prem software or, any other software that we had done in the past. So I think it's actually more fun. It gives us a lot more flexibility to innovate and get things out faster and try out a lot of things that we just didn't have the luxury to do before.
Right. Now one of the tricks with SaaS is, SaaS has got a certain economic model to it, right? You guys today you're in beta, the initial product may be free at the user level, and it becomes, a for fee, as features come in. Like, how do you think about it? You talked about working with Steve Herrod, and like, how well do you feel like people understand the SaaS economic model as a founder, business leader, in terms of how many people you need to convert and how long you can go, with sort of free things? And is that getting to be a pretty understood economic model, or is it still, it depends on your business as to, what you can burn through before you're converting customers and so forth?
Yeah, it's absolutely that. I think it varies from company to company, right? And as you pointed out, we have a freemium model. The existing product is free. The way we're thinking about it is, for a product like ours, the key thing is user engagement, right? If people come back and use this product to give feedback to each other, to receive feedback from people that they work with, and they feel like this feedback that they're getting is actually useful to them, that's when they'll come back to the app, right? And so that's what we're focused on, is how do we get user engagement? If we have user engagement, we can always monetize, right? So monetize, or trying to monetize too early at the expense of user engagement, is actually a bad thing for us. And so, we were able to talk to our investors, and they were very supportive of this, as to say, hey, look, don't be like every other HR software where you go sell to HR and then you leave, we're focused on being bottoms up, right? And it's almost like, what Dropbox has done to SharePoint, could we do that in the HR space, right? By focusing on users, making them love the product, and they say, look, we've got to have this, and it starts spreading organically within the company because just people love it. And so that's what we're focused on. And depending on your business and the product, SaaS is, everything could be SaaS, right? There's so many different products out there. For some products that'll work, and for other products it may not. But that's how we're thinking about it. For us, user engagement is the be-all, end-all for us at this point in time.
Yeah, the Dropbox versus SharePoint is certainly a very interesting model, and one I may not have thought about in the past of how do you reach that critical mass and that tipping point as quickly as possible and get that re-engagement on a regular basis, without a doubt. That's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about it, the SharePoint, it's a multi-billion-dollar business, right? And it's really built, and bought by IT folks. And a lot of users never actually touched it because it's just too complicated, And then, Dropbox comes out and it's so easy to use, and, my mom can use it, And that's how it starts spreading. And, once people love it, they'll bring it into work. That's the whole consumerization of IT that we've seen, right? So in a sense, we're trying to do something similar in the HR space. Maybe it's consumerization of HR software, but that's the way we're thinking about it. It's got to be about users. It's got to be about helping users get better. And if we can crack that, money will come.
It's the self-improvement as a service.
Exactly. Nice.
And Amy, he did mention that your magic word mentoring earlier. I just was wondering your take on all of that, as well as a kind of a side thing here of, using this as a mentoring tool and all of the aspects of that.
Well, yeah, I think that's pretty cool. The concept of crowdsourcing a mentor, it actually led me to wonder, kind of a geeky question, one tick up, is, I know you can't tell us the secret sauce, but I'm sort of curious about the big data set that was used originally to make some of the choices in terms of the norming of, left or right as a positive or negative, things that would associate, is it fuzzy logic? Is it logic? How do you determine who would be a good mentor? Just some of the guts of it, I think, are really fascinating. The kind of the thought that went into crafting what looks like self-improvement, what does make someone better.
Yeah, I don't think we've solved it yet. It's an ongoing thing for us. But certainly on the swiping left and right was the easy part. But underneath those cards, there's actually buttons. I'm sure you guys don't use Tinder, and I don't use it either, but just from looking at the UI, right? You can swipe on pictures left and right. And then underneath the pictures, I think there's like a heart icon and like an X or something like that, right? And so we actually spent 4 months trying to figure out what those buttons should be for us, right? We started with like a thumbs up and thumbs down, right? To say, okay, thumbs up meaning it's a strength, thumbs down meaning that it's not yet a strength. But we noticed that nobody was swiping left, because the notion of giving a thumbs down to somebody on a particular skill seemed so harsh. That means like you're almost saying, oh, you suck at this, right? And well, you don't suck that badly, And so like people were like, and then they wouldn't like swipe left at all. And so we spent a fair bit of time trying to figure out, okay, what should we put in there, right? And so we tried so many different combinations before we landed on, this is a strength. And, I think the current buttons say always, you do this always, and you don't do this enough, I think is where we landed. And that seems to be okay. And we'll probably try a few more different combinations there to figure out, how do we really convey when you're giving feedback that you're not saying that you suck, you're just saying, hey, this is not yet a strength. It can become a strength, but you're not quite there yet, And so I think we spent a fair bit of time, and we'll continue to kind of iterate on that. And then on the mentoring thing, it's all about collecting data, right? We're collecting all this data for every card, every skill. We know who has it as a strength and who has it as not yet a strength, right? And we have all this data in the back end. And so we're able to like figure out, okay, who are the top people for any skill, right? And be able to recommend, folks from that list, to other folks who need help. And over time, we're thinking maybe we can even recommend classes that people could take, right? We can potentially even, put up YouTube videos that you can watch to get better at, like, say, presentations or something, How can we, like, put a lot of effort? How can we become almost like a coach to you, right?
Well, and this is what I find fascinating, is if you've taken this very human thing, I love the kind of tension, if you will, between making people better humans and using automation and data to do that. It's pretty fascinating.
Absolutely.
So, and it also has to be one of the first times anonymous data isn't used for trolling.
Yeah.
Anonymous data is also used for gambling.
True.
So let me ask you one last question. We'll kind of wrap this up because we're running into our time slot. A lot of us will go to technical conferences. We go to technical events because we're in the technology business and we're selling technical stuff. Like, who do you find are the early adopters of this? Is this it's obviously there's an aspect of this that's a collaboration piece. So is it people that identify themselves as being sort of DevOps teams, or do you find they're like marketing organizations and you go where they, how do you find the people that want to do this stuff? Is it smaller companies, is it larger companies?
Yeah, it's fascinating. So we're actually getting our initial traction from product teams, right? So we've been reaching out to heads of product or heads of engineering, and here's a pitch to them, right? We say, look, you guys are all agile, right? So you're continuously developing, you're continuously testing, you're continuously integrating, you're continuously shipping, right? Stuff is happening, continuously. And feedback should be continuous as well, such that it fits in with the way you guys are working versus you guys dropping everything that you're doing once a year to fit into the way HR works. And that pitch about, continuous feedback being in line with the way you work is resonating really, really well with product teams. And that's where we're getting our initial traction. And so our sponsors, for all the, early design partners that we've had and the customers who are actually downloading the product off the website, most of them are starting off being product teams. And then from there, we're growing organically within organizations.
That makes perfect sense. The teams that love a lot of data and love to give a big FU to HR whenever they can. So
we're not recommending that you do that. I just want to be on record saying that we love it.
So you don't own fuhr.com? That's not one of your domains?
We love HR domain.
I had to throw that in there.
I think it's actually a viable question. I wonder if in the marketplace, if HR departments would feel threatened. I thought that was an interesting story you told, that people felt that was actually an asset, just like you would have a gym membership. Improve your soul, improve yourself.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of the progressive, HR folks that we're talking to actually do view this as a benefit. And in a sense, they want to be heroes too, right? For the longest time, HR is always, kind of getting kicked around in a sense, right? And so anything that helps them be the heroes to their employees by bringing in and supporting software that actually helps their employees is actually a good thing. And so we're actually seeing some of the early, more progressive HR folks saying, hey, this is actually a good thing. We should actually support this, So it's not, not trying to stick it to HR by any means.
Yeah. Well, listen, SK, this has been fascinating. I think we went in a few places that maybe we hadn't expected to. What's if people want to go try it out? What's the best place to go find the software and maybe play around with it? Yeah,
it's free, and so you can actually sign up for free at www.zugata.com, zugata.com. You can sign up and start using the product. It's free.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, listen, folks, we're going to wrap it up. Once again, thanks again for everybody who's been listening and telling a friend. Thank you for all the stuff in the past about the Krispy Kreme thing and that going forward. But for Aaron and Amy and for SK, folks, thanks for listening tonight, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.